Was it wrong for Samson to take a wife from among the Philistines? This is the question that we seek to answer today as we continue our verse-by-verse study of the book of Judges on Walking Through the Bible. Today we're going to be discussing Judges 14, verses 1 to 6, but before we do that, let's read the passage. If you have a Bible with you, you can turn to Judges 14, verse 1, but if you don't have a Bible, don't worry, just follow along with us on the screen. The version that we'll be reading from is the New King James Version. So Judges 14, beginning at verse 1. Now Samson went down to Timnah and saw a woman in Timnah of the daughters of the Philistines. So he went up and told his father and mother, saying, I have seen a woman in Timnah of the daughters of the Philistines. Now therefore, get her for me as a wife. Then his father and mother said to him, Is there no woman among the daughters of your brethren, or among all my people, that you must go and get a wife from the uncircumcised Philistines? And Samson said to his father, Get her for me, for she pleases me well. But his father and mother did not know that it was of the Lord, and that he was seeking an occasion to move against the Philistines. For at that time the Philistines had dominion over Israel. So Samson went down to Timnah with his father and mother, and came to the vineyards of Timnah. Now to his surprise, a young lion came roaring against him. And the Spirit of the Lord came mightily upon him, and he tore the lion apart, as one would have torn apart a young goat, though he had nothing in his hand. But he did not tell his father or his mother what he had done. Samson was born to Manoah and his wife during the period of the Philistine oppression. The whole purpose of God for Samson was that he would begin delivering Israel from that oppression, showing us that God never designed for the Philistines to oppress Israel perpetually, but would, through his divine providence, specifically raise up someone who would accomplish this purpose. Samson was to be a Nazirite from the womb for his entire life, meaning that he would have certain dietary restrictions, he would not cut his hair, nor would he be among that which was dead, following the instructions found in Numbers 6. It is important that we remember what these instructions were, for they will come up as we study the character of Samson. Chapter 14 shows us that some time has passed. How much time, we don't know, but since Samson is said to have judged Israel for 20 years up until his death, and the Philistines were said to have oppressed Israel for about 40 years, we probably can safely bring our timeline here in chapter 14 down to about 1098 BC. Which would make sense, for this would be around the same time that Jephthah would be delivering Gilead from the Ammonites, so that God began delivering Israel from the Philistines around this time fits with our conclusion that this oppression of the Philistines is the same one mentioned in chapter 10 and not some other oppression. What we do learn about Samson from the beginning of chapter 14 is that he is a man of an age who wants to get married. Now we know that Samson is a young man here, maybe only about 20 years old, but that doesn't change the fact that he is now old enough to get married. In the course of his travels, Samson went down from Zorah, where he lived, to Timnah, a town about 7 kilometers or 4.5 miles away, the way the crow flies, as our map shows. Timnah itself was a border town between Dan and Judah, though it belonged to the tribe of Dan officially. But due to the incomplete conquest of Canaan by Israel some 3 centuries earlier, and her later rebellions, Timnah seemed to be inhabited at least in part by the Philistines, for it is from among the daughters of the Philistines that lived in Timnah that Samson found the woman he wanted to marry. It is said that this woman pleased Samson well, meaning that she was very beautiful to behold. Now when Samson told Manoah and his mother that he wanted Manoah to make the marriage arrangements according to the customs of the culture, Manoah objected, desiring that Samson marry from among the Hebrews. This shows us that even during this time of corruption, that there were still some people in Israel who knew what the law of Moses said in places like Deuteronomy 7, 3 and 4 about marriages between Israel and the people of the land. The law that God gave there was not xenophobic or ethnophobic. Rather, it was meant to prevent Israel from following after the idols that these other nations worshipped. If those other nations worshipped God, God would not have placed such a restriction. Now Israel disobeyed this command to their detriment, as we have seen here in the book of Judges. But what Manoah didn't know was that Samson marrying from among the Philistines was by God's design, for that is how he would begin delivering Israel from this oppression. Now you have to ask the question, wasn't God getting Samson to sin by breaking the law of Moses? And the answer to that is no, because the Lord, the lawgiver, is the one who approved of Samson's actions. Something is only sinful because God says so. Fornication and adultery are only sinful because God told us so. And the reason I know this is because by definition, the animal kingdom commits fornication all of the time with God's approval. With men and women being created in the image of God, that means that we are not wild animals. For we have an eternal spirit, we have a consciousness, we have a conscience, and we have the ability to not only know the difference between right and wrong, but the free will to choose the right over the wrong. But the fact remains that something is only wrong because God said it was wrong. Sometimes he reveals to us the reasons, and sometimes he doesn't. But God is the lawgiver. He decides what is right and wrong. And in Samson's case, the Lord had revealed to Samson his allowance for Samson to marry a Philistine in this specific case, even though he did not want Israel to marry among the foreign nations in general. For us today, God doesn't speak to us directly. He speaks through his word. So if we want to know if something is right or wrong, we had better consult the Bible, for it will tell us if our actions will please or displease God. Manoah acceded to his son's wishes, and so the family all came down to Timnah to begin the preparations for this marriage. Along the way, though, Samson must have gotten separated from his parents in the vineyards, for a young lion came out and attacked him. The Spirit of the Lord fell upon Samson, so that Samson was able to tear apart the lion with his bare hands instead of using a weapon. Why would the Lord allow Samson to do this? Because Samson was going to deliver Israel from the Philistines, not die from a lion attack. So the Lord gave Samson the strength he needed to kill the lion. Samson, however, didn't tell his parents of the attack, nor what he had done, something we'll need to remember for later on in this chapter. With that, our time is up for today. The Lord willing, we hope you'll join us for tomorrow's discussion of Judges chapter 14, verses 7 to 14, as we continue our walk through the Bible, one verse at a time. Thank you for watching today's episode. We hope that you found it edifying and ask that you not only subscribe to our channel and podcast, but that you like and share this episode among your friends so that the saving gospel of Jesus Christ can go out to the whole world.